Hello and welcome back to the Sleepy Darwin. Whether you're here to unwind after a busy day or simply let your mind drift through the quiet mysteries of our living world, you've found the perfect refuge. Tonight, we're embarking on a gentle journey through nature's most elegant secret, the endless recycling that connects every breath you take to ancient forests, every drop of water in your body to primordial oceans, and every atom in your being to the hearts of long-dead stars. This is the story of how nothing in nature is ever truly lost, only endlessly transformed in cycles so beautiful and patient they'll make you see every fallen leaf, every exhaled breath, every beating heart as part of one magnificent, interconnected dance. Now, before we begin this soothing exploration, if you find comfort in these sleepy science journeys, a gentle like and subscribe would mean the world to me. It helps keep this little corner of the cosmos calm and curious. And I'd love to know where you're listening from tonight and what time it is in your part of the world. Are you curled up somewhere cozy? Or perhaps watching the stars from your window? I do hope this isn't so fascinating that it keeps you wide awake. But if it does, at least you'll drift off knowing you're part of the universe's most beautiful recycling program. So settle in, let your breathing slow, and prepare to discover how nature recycles life itself. Take a gentle breath in, and now slowly let it out. In that simple act, something you've done perhaps 20,000 times today, without thinking you've just participated in one of the universe's most ancient and beautiful recycling programs. Let's follow a single oxygen molecule on its journey, shall we? Imagine it as a tiny time traveler, carrying stories from ancient forests, from the lungs of creatures long extinct, from the very beginnings of life itself. Picture this molecule as it enters your lungs right now. It's been on quite an adventure to reach you. Just moments ago, it might have been dancing in the leaves of an oak tree outside your window, or perhaps it was part of a wave breaking on a distant shore. But its story goes back much, much further than that. This particular oxygen molecule, let's call it 027,394,829,156 inch. The cosmic inventory was created billions of years ago when cyanobacteria first learned the magical art of photosynthesis. These tiny blue-green organisms, no bigger than the period at the end of this sentence, discovered how to crack open water molecules using nothing but sunlight. In doing so, they accidentally poisoned their own atmosphere with this highly reactive gas we now call oxygen. What was toxic to them became the breath of life for nearly everything that followed. As you breathe in, feel how effortlessly this molecule passes through the delicate membrane of your lungs' alveoli, those tiny air sacs that look like clusters of soap bubbles. There are about 600 million of these microscopic balloons in your lungs, creating a surface area roughly the size of a tennis court, all folded neatly inside your chest. Our traveling molecule slips through this membrane and into your bloodstream, where it hitches a ride on a hemoglobin molecule, that remarkable protein that turns your blood red and acts like a tiny taxi service for oxygen. Now imagine this. That same molecule might have been breathed by a brontosaurus 150 million years ago, slowly munching on cycads in what would become Colorado. It could have been part of the great forests that would eventually become coal, locked away in darkness for hundreds of millions of years before being released again into the sky. It might have swirled in the lungs of the first mammals, tiny shrew-like creatures scurrying between the feet of dinosaurs. The mathematics of breath sharing is wonderfully dizzying. Every breath you take contains approximately 25 sextillion molecules. That's a 25 followed by 21 zeros. In a single day, the average person cycles through about 550 litres of oxygen. Over a lifetime of roughly 80 years, you'll breathe in and out about 600 million times, processing enough air to fill a small hot air balloon every single day. But here's where it gets beautifully strange. The atmosphere mixes so thoroughly that within just a few years, any molecule you breathe out will have circulated around the globe several times. This means that in every breath you take, you're inhaling molecules that were once part of everyone who came before you. The oxygen molecule that just entered your lungs might have once sustained Cleopatra as she sailed down the Nile, or powered the thoughts of Leonardo da Vinci as he sketched his flying machines. The oxygen cycle moves in waves, like a vast oceanic circulation that encompasses not just the seas, but the entire planet. During the day, plants and algae are busy splitting water molecules, releasing oxygen as what they consider waste. At night, both plants and animals consume oxygen, turning it back into carbon dioxide and water. It's a rhythm as fundamental as a heartbeat, as regular as the tides, as constant as the turning of the earth itself. Think of the atmosphere as a vast, invisible ocean that we all swim in together. Just as a drop of water released into the Pacific will eventually touch every shore, every molecule of oxygen you release will eventually find its way into the lungs of someone, somewhere, somewhen. You are breathing the same air that filled the lungs of poets and philosophers, of ancient whales and the very first flowers. Take a moment to breathe deeply. Feel that connection to every living thing. With each inhalation, you're participating in a conversation that began billions of years ago. You're part of an unbroken chain of breath that connects you to the earliest life on Earth, to the great forests of the Carboniferous period, to the first bird that ever took flight. Your personal breathing statistics are quietly remarkable. You'll take about 20,000 breaths today, roughly 7 million this year, and over 500 million in your lifetime. Each breath connects you to approximately 10 sextillion. Other living things that are breathing right now, every tree, every blade of grass, every tiny zooplankton in the ocean, every sleeping cat, every singing bird. And when you exhale, you're not just releasing waste, you're making a gift to the green world. That carbon dioxide you breathe out will be captured by a plant somewhere, maybe in a rainforest, maybe in your own backyard, and turned back into oxygen. The water vapor in your breath will rise and become part of a cloud, will fall as rain, will nourish the roots of trees that will, in turn, breathe out the oxygen that some future person will breathe in. This is the poetry of the oxygen cycle. Nothing is ever lost. Everything is always moving, always changing hands, always beginning again. The molecule that just left your lungs on that last exhale is already beginning its next adventure, carrying a tiny piece of your story with it as it travels the world. As you settle in for the night, wherever you are in the world, remember that you are part of this ancient circulation. Your breath is part of the planet's breathing. You are a note in the great symphony of atmospheric exchange that has been playing for billions of years and will continue long after the last human breath. In the gentle rhythm of your sleeping breath, you are keeping time with the heartbeat of the living earth itself. Close your eyes for a moment and take another breath. That air filling your lungs right now carries with it the most extraordinary heritage imaginable. You are breathing molecules that have been cycling through this atmosphere for billions of years. Some of them date back to the very first organisms that learned to photosynthesize, those ancient cyanobacteria that fundamentally changed the chemistry of our world. Think about this. Every breath you take contains atoms of oxygen that were split from water molecules by the first plants on Earth. These weren't the towering oaks or delicate flowers we know today, but microscopic blue-green organisms floating in primordial seas, using sunlight to break apart H2O and releasing O2 as their waste product. What they discarded as poison became the foundation of all complex life on Earth. The air you're breathing has a memory that stretches back 2.4 billion years to what scientists call the Great Oxygenation Event. Before this atmospheric revolution, Earth's sky held almost no free oxygen. Instead, it was rich with methane, ammonia, and hydrogen sulfide, a toxic soup that would kill us in moments. But those ancient bacteria kept working, day after day, year after year, century after century, slowly changing the composition of our planet's breath. The mathematical poetry of atmospheric mixing is breathtaking in its implications. Consider this gentle calculation. Julius Caesar died in 44 BCE, and with his last breath, he exhaled roughly 25 sextillion molecules into the Roman air. Those molecules have been circulating in our atmosphere for over 2,000 years now, mixing and mingling with every other breath ever taken. The mathematics tells us that in every breath you take right now, you're inhaling an average of about 15 molecules that were once part of Caesar's final exhalation. But Caesar is just one person in the vast tapestry of breathing beings. Every human who ever lived, every pharaoh and peasant, every poet and philosopher, every child who ever laughed, every elder who ever sighed has contributed molecules to this atmospheric commons we all share. The air holds the breath of Cleopatra and Einstein, of your great-grandmother and the first human to walk upright on the African savannah. And it's not just humans. The atmosphere remembers the breath of every creature that ever lived. The great dinosaurs who ruled the Earth for 165 million years, every one of their breaths is still cycling through our air. The woolly mammoths of the ice ages, the saber-toothed cats, the giant ground sloths. Their respiratory contributions are still swirling around us, still available for us to breathe. Think of the atmosphere as a cosmic soup that's been simmering for billions of years, with every breathing creature adding their own molecular ingredients to the mix. The first fish to develop primitive lungs, the earliest amphibians to crawl onto land, the first reptiles, the first mammals, the first birds, they're all still here with us, in every breath we take. The mixing happens through what meteorologists call atmospheric circulation, but I prefer to think of it as the planet's breathing patterns. Great currents of air move around the globe, carrying molecules from the Amazon rainforest to the Arctic tundra, from the depths of ocean trenches where volcanic vents release ancient gases to the highest peaks of the Himalayas. Trade winds, jet streams, thermal currents, and weather systems all work together to ensure that the breath of the world is thoroughly, completely, beautifully mixed. The timescale of this mixing is both swift and eternal. A molecule you breathe out today will circle the globe within a few weeks, carried by the great atmospheric rivers that flow around our planet. Within a year or two, it will have had the chance to be breathed by thousands of other organisms. Within a decade, it will have visited every continent, every ecosystem, every pocket of life on Earth. But some of the air you're breathing has been cycling much longer than human history, longer than the existence of our species. Oxygen molecules released by the first forests 400 million years ago are still circulating today. The breath of the great fern forests that would become our coal deposits, the exhalations of the first flowers that bloomed 130 million years ago, the respiratory output of the vast herds of mammoths and mastodons, it's all still here, still part of every breath you take. Consider the patience of atmospheric memory. The oxygen in your lungs right now might have been locked in ice at the poles for thousands of years before being released by melting. It might have been dissolved in the deep ocean for centuries, slowly circulating through the great oceanic currents before finally bubbling back to the surface. It might have been part of a tree ring, locked in wood for decades or even centuries, before being released again when the tree finally fell and decomposed. The atmosphere also holds the memory of catastrophes and renewals, the breath from the great volcanic eruptions that nearly ended life on Earth multiple times that's still circulating. The oxygen released by the forests that grew back after asteroid impacts wiped out entire ecosystems, we're still breathing it. The respiratory output of life as it recovered from ice ages, as it adapted to changing climates, as it spread to every corner of the planet, it's all still here, swirling around us in an invisible testament to life's resilience. And here's something wonderfully strange to contemplate. The air you're breathing connects you not just to the past, but to the future. The molecules you exhale tonight will be breathed by people not yet born, by creatures not yet evolved. Your breath will contribute to the atmospheric inheritance of generations to come, just as you are now benefiting from the respiratory legacy of billions of years of breathing beings. The seasonal cycles add another layer to atmospheric memory. Every spring, as leaves unfurl and photosynthesis begins in earnest, the global oxygen levels rise slightly. Every autumn, as leaves fall and decomposition increases, oxygen levels drop slightly. You can actually detect these breathing patterns of the planet in the atmospheric data, the Earth inhaling and exhaling with the seasons, a planetary respiratory rhythm that has been going on for hundreds of millions of years. Take another deep breath now, and as you do, try to sense the history in that air. Try to feel the weight of deep time, the accumulated breath of every living thing that came before you. In this single inhalation, you are participating in a conversation that began when the first bacteria learned to split water with sunlight, that continued through the first forests, the first animals, the first humans to wonder about their place in the world. In this breath, you hold a piece of the very first spring, that moment, 2.4 billion years ago, when the atmosphere first began to carry the waste products of life, when the sky first began to turn from methane-hazed brown to the clear blue we know today. You are breathing the legacy of every creature that ever contributed to this atmospheric commons. And with every exhalation, you are adding your own small chapter to this vast, ongoing story. As you drift towards sleep tonight, let that thought comfort you. You are part of something infinitely larger and older than yourself, connected by every breath to the entire history of life on Earth. The air flowing in and out of your lungs has sustained dinosaurs and daffodils, whales and hummingbirds, all the countless lives that came before you and all the lives yet to come. Now let's turn our attention to the magicians who make all this breathing possible, the green world that surrounds us, working quietly, constantly, to transform sunlight into the very air we breathe. If we are the recipients of atmospheric gifts, then plants are the universe's most generous benefactors, the original recycling specialists who learned to turn light itself into life. Imagine, if you will, that every leaf you see is a tiny solar panel, but one far more sophisticated than anything humans have yet invented. Each leaf is a miniature factory running on pure sunlight, taking in carbon dioxide that we consider waste and transforming it into the oxygen we desperately need. It's an arrangement so perfect, so elegant, that it seems almost too good to be true. What we breathe out, they breathe in, and what they breathe out, we breathe in. It's the universe's most beautiful partnership. The story of photosynthesis begins with the most unlikely heroes, ancient bacteria floating in primordial seas billions of years ago. These tiny organisms, no bigger than the smallest speck of dust you might see, dancing in a sunbeam, made what might be the most important discovery in the history of life. They learned to capture sunlight and use its energy to split water molecules, releasing oxygen as what they considered merely a waste product. But what alchemy this represents. To take something as ephemeral as light, those massless packets of energy streaming from our star, and use it to rearrange matter itself, to take carbon dioxide from the air and water from the soil and weave them into sugar, into cellulose, into all the countless molecules that make up a living plant. It's a form of transmutation that medieval alchemists could only dream of. Yet it happens in every leaf, in every blade of grass, in every grain of wheat that feeds us. The molecule that makes this possible is chlorophyll, that remarkable green compound that gives plants their color and their power. Think of chlorophyll as nature's first invention of the solar cell, except instead of generating electricity, it generates life itself. When a photon of sunlight, a tiny packet of energy that has traveled 93 million miles in 8.5 minutes, strikes a chlorophyll molecule, it's captured and transformed into chemical energy faster than you can blink. In fact, the initial capture happens in less than a trillionth of a second. But here's what's truly magical. That energy is used to power what scientists call the Calvin cycle, but I prefer to think of as nature's recycling program. Carbon dioxide molecules from the air, the same CO2 that you just exhaled, are captured and combined with water to create glucose, the simple sugar that forms the foundation of all plant life. And as a byproduct of this process, oxygen molecules are released back into the air for us to breathe. Each leaf is performing this alchemy millions of times every second. A single large tree, say, that oak outside your window, produces enough oxygen in one day to support 2 adult humans. Over the course of a year, it will process about 48 pounds of carbon dioxide and release about 260 pounds of oxygen into the atmosphere. That's the respiratory output of nearly 400 people, all produced by one silent, patient tree. Now multiply that by all the plants on Earth, not just the trees, but every blade of grass, every fern in the forest understory, every floating piece of algae in the ocean, every moss clinging to a rock, every tiny wildflower blooming unseen in a mountain meadow. Collectively, they form what we might call Earth's lungs, breathing in our waste and breathing out our life. The numbers are staggering in their quiet generosity. Photosynthesis produces about 330 billion tons of organic compounds every year, while simultaneously releasing roughly 220 billion tons of oxygen into the atmosphere. This is happening right now, as you read these words, in countless leaves and blades and fronds all around the world. The morning sun touching a forest canopy, the underwater ballet of kelp forests, the quiet work of desert succulents storing sunlight for the long, dry months ahead. It's all part of this vast, coordinated effort to keep the planet breathing. But carbon's journey doesn't end with photosynthesis, it's just beginning another phase of its endless recycling. The glucose created in leaves becomes the building blocks for everything else in the plant. The cellulose in cell walls, the lignin that makes wood hard, the sugars that make fruit sweet, the oils that make seeds nutritious. When we eat plants, we're consuming concentrated sunlight, energy that was captured by photosynthesis and stored in molecular form. And when plants die, their carbon begins another journey. Some of it is released quickly back to the atmosphere as decomposing bacteria and fungi break down dead plant matter. But some of it becomes part of the soil, contributing to that rich, dark humus that makes gardens grow. and some of it over very long periods of time becomes coal or oil or natural gas, storing ancient sunlight deep underground until we dig it up and burn it, releasing that prehistoric carbon back into the modern atmosphere. Think of forests as vast breathing entities, inhaling carbon dioxide and exhaling oxygen on a scale that dwarfs our own respiratory efforts. During the day, a mature forest produces more oxygen than it consumes. At night, when photosynthesis stops but cellular respiration continues, the forest consumes more oxygen than it produces. But over the course of a day, the net result is a gift to the atmosphere: more oxygen released than consumed, more carbon dioxide removed from the air than added to it. The seasonal rhythms of photosynthesis create what we might call the planet's breathing patterns. In spring, as buds burst and leaves unfurl across the northern hemisphere, global oxygen levels rise slightly as billions of plants begin their photosynthetic work in earnest. In autumn, as leaves fall and photosynthesis slows, oxygen levels drop slightly. We can actually measure these fluctuations in atmospheric monitoring stations around the world, the planet breathing in and out with the seasons. But perhaps the most beautiful aspect of photosynthesis is its patience and persistence. Every plant, from the smallest moss to the tallest redwood, is working constantly to transform the ingredients of yesterday into the possibilities of tomorrow. They ask for nothing but sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide, and in return they provide not just oxygen, but food, shelter, beauty, and the very foundation of all terrestrial ecosystems. Every leaf is a tiny factory, turning yesterday's breath into tomorrow's life. The carbon dioxide you breathed out a moment ago is already being captured by plants somewhere in the world, already being woven into new growth, already being prepared for its transformation back into oxygen that you might breathe again someday. It's a cycle so fundamental, so essential, so perfectly balanced that it almost seems like the universe designed it with infinite care. As you settle into sleep tonight, wherever you are in the world, remember that the green world never rests. Even in darkness, when photosynthesis pauses, plants are still working, still growing, still preparing for tomorrow's sunlight. They are the quiet guardians of our atmosphere, the patient alchemists who transform light into life, the generous partners who make every breath possible. In their endless, selfless work, we see one of the universe's most beautiful examples of recycling the same elements, cycling endlessly between air and plant and soil, and air again, supporting life in all its countless forms. Every leaf is a love letter from the universe, written in chlorophyll and sunlight, addressed to every breathing thing. Take a sip of water. Go ahead, pause for a moment if you have some nearby. Feel it on your tongue, cool and clean, sliding down your throat to join the vast internal ocean that keeps you alive. That simple act, drinking water, connects you to a story that began 4.5 billion years ago, when our planet was young and molten, when comets and asteroids were still painting the early Earth with the gifts they carried from the frozen reaches of space. The water you just swallowed is older than life itself. Every molecule of H2O that passes your lips has been on an extraordinary journey through deep time, through space, through the bodies of countless creatures, through clouds and glaciers and underground rivers, through the cells of ancient forests and the bloodstreams of dinosaurs. It has been ice and steam and liquid, has fallen as snow on mountains that no longer exist, has been part of seas that dried up millions of years ago. Imagine, if you will, a single water molecule, let's call it H, 20927 inch our cosmic inventory. 4.5 billion years ago, this molecule was born in the heart of a young star, forged when hydrogen atoms danced together with oxygen in the nuclear furnace of stellar creation. When that star died in a spectacular supernova, our molecule was flung out into the cosmic darkness, eventually becoming part of the vast cloud of dust and gas that would collapse to form our solar system. As the early Earth took shape, spinning molten and violent in the young solar system, our water molecule rode in on a comet, one of countless icy messengers from the outer reaches of space. These comets were like frozen time capsules, carrying water that had been locked in ice for millions of years as they wandered the dark spaces between planets. When they crashed into the early Earth, they delivered the oceans, drop by drop, impact by impact. But here's something beautiful to contemplate. That water molecule has never left our planet. Not once in 4.5 billion years has it escaped to space, It has been recycled endlessly, participating in the most elegant dance imaginable, the hydrologic cycle, nature's perfect circular symphony of evaporation, condensation, precipitation, and flow. This dance begins with the sun, that patient star that has been driving water's circulation for billions of years. Solar energy lifts water molecules from oceans, lakes, rivers, and leaves, carrying them up into the atmosphere as invisible vapor. Up in the sky, these molecules gather in clouds, those floating rivers of potential rain, each droplet a tiny sphere containing millions of water molecules that have stories to tell. When conditions are right, gravity calls them home. They fall as rain or snow, each drop a messenger from the sky, carrying with it the memory of where it has been. Some drops soak into the soil, beginning a slow journey through underground aquifers that may take thousands of years. Others flow quickly down mountainsides, joining streams that become rivers that flow to the sea. Still others are captured by plants, drawn up through roots and stems to leaves, where they evaporate back into the atmosphere, continuing the eternal dance. The water in your morning coffee may have once been trapped in a glacier in Greenland, locked in ice for tens of thousands of years, slowly compacted under its own weight until it was harder than stone. It may have fallen as rain on the gardens of ancient Egypt, nourishing the grain that fed the builders of the pyramids. It may have been part of the vast inland seas that once covered the American West, where trilobites crawled on muddy bottoms 500 million years ago. Consider the mathematical impossibility of water being destroyed. In all the violence of Earth's history, asteroid impacts, volcanic eruptions, continental collisions, ice ages, the rise and fall of mountain ranges, water molecules remain intact. They may change from liquid to gas to solid and back again. They may be locked away in underground reservoirs or high in the atmosphere, but they are never destroyed, never lost, never created anew. The total amount of water on Earth has remained essentially constant for billions of years. The same water that filled the first oceans still flows in our rivers today. The same water that the first life forms emerged from still falls as rain on our gardens. We are not consuming water so much as borrowing it, using it briefly before passing it on to the next stage of its endless journey. Think about the patience of water. A molecule that evaporates from the Pacific Ocean today might spend days or weeks floating in the atmosphere before falling as rain on a forest in Oregon. It might soak into the ground and spend decades moving slowly through underground aquifers before emerging from a spring. It might be taken up by a tree and transpired back into the atmosphere within hours. It might freeze in a mountain snowpack and remain locked in ice for months before melting in the spring. The average water molecule spends about 9 days in the atmosphere, but this is just an average. Some molecules fall back to Earth within hours, while others may drift in the sky for weeks. Once on the ground, water's journey becomes even more varied. In a river, it might reach the ocean within days or weeks. In an aquifer, it might spend thousands of years slowly moving through rock and soil. In a glacier, it might remain frozen for tens of thousands of years. But whether fast or slow, every water molecule eventually returns to the sea, to that vast reservoir that holds 97% of all water on Earth. The oceans are both the beginning and the end of water's journey, the great mixing bowl where all water eventually gathers before beginning the cycle anew. From the deepest ocean trenches to the highest clouds, from the smallest dewdrop to the largest lake, all water is connected in one vast, dynamic system. Listen. Can you hear the quiet hum of water moving through your body? The soft circulation of blood through your veins, the gentle filtering happening in your kidneys, the moisture in your breath as you exhale. You are part of this hydrologic cycle, a temporary way station for water on its eternal journey. About 60% of your body is water, roughly 42 litres, if you're an average adult, and all of that water is on loan from the global circulation system. The water in your cells has been everywhere water can be. It has been rain and snow, rivers and glaciers, has passed through the bodies of countless other creatures, has been part of ancient seas and primordial storms. The hydrogen atoms in your body are as old as the universe itself, forged in the first few minutes after the Big Bang. The oxygen atoms were created in the hearts of dying stars and scattered into space by supernovas. Together, they form molecules that have been dancing through the Earth system for billions of years. Every time you drink water, you are participating in this ancient circulation. Every time you perspire or exhale moisture, you are contributing to the great atmospheric river that flows around our planet. The water that leaves your body today will continue its journey. It might fall as rain on a distant mountain, might nourish a plant in a far-off forest, might become part of a cloud that brings rain to a drought-stricken land. There is something profoundly comforting about water's immortality. In a world where so much seems temporary and fragile, water endures. It changes form constantly, but never disappears, never diminishes, never fails to participate in the great cycles that keep our planet alive. The same water that sustained the first life forms in ancient seas is still here, still flowing, still carrying minerals and nutrients, still making life possible. As you prepare for sleep tonight, wherever you are in the world, remember that you are made mostly of this ancient, immortal water. Your body is a temporary vessel for molecules that have been part of countless other lives, countless other adventures. The water flowing through your veins has witnessed the entire history of life on Earth. And after you, it will continue its journey, carrying perhaps some molecular memory of the time it spent keeping you alive. Close your eyes and imagine the vast, slow circulation of water around our planet, the clouds drifting overhead, the rivers flowing to the sea, the underground streams moving through darkness, the gentle rise of water vapor from every lake and leaf. You are part of this circulation, breathing water in and out, drinking it and releasing it, participating in the same hydrologic dance that has been going on since the first rains fell on the young Earth. In water's endless dance, we find one of the universe's most beautiful examples of conservation. Nothing lost, everything transformed, everything connected in vast, slow cycles that link every drop to every other drop, every moment to every other moment in the long, wet history of our blue planet. If water is the blood of our planet, then rivers are its arteries, great flowing pathways that carry life-giving moisture from the high places to the low, from the mountains to the sea, connecting every watershed in a vast circulatory system that has been pumping for billions of years. Every river is a storyteller, carrying in its flow the memories of mountains, the history of weather, the tales of all the landscapes it has touched. Think of a river as a liquid library, carrying information downstream in the form of dissolved minerals, microscopic organisms, bits of organic matter, and countless other molecular messengers. When you stand beside a flowing stream and watch the water move past, you're watching the autobiography of an entire watershed being written in real time, one drop at a time. Consider the Colorado River, carving its patient way through the Grand Canyon. Over the course of millions of years, this river has been reading the stone story of the American Southwest, dissolving it grain by grain, carrying it toward the sea. Every pebble in its bed, every particle of silt in its water, every mineral dissolved in its flow tells part of the story of how mountains rise and fall, how climates change, how time itself sculpts the landscape. The journey begins in the high places, where snow accumulates in winter and melts in spring, where rain falls on rocky peaks and gathers in tiny rivulets that merge and grow. These headwater streams are like the capillaries of the Earth's circulatory system, gathering moisture from an entire mountainside and channeling it into larger and larger vessels. Each tributary carries its own signature, its own particular mixture of minerals leached from local rocks, its own seasonal rhythms, its own story of the land it drains. As streams merge to form rivers, they become archives of their entire watershed. The sediment they carry tells the story of erosion, of landslides and forest fires, of the patient weathering of stone. The dissolved minerals reveal the chemistry of the bedrock, the types of rocks the water has encountered, the underground passages it has followed. The organic matter bits of leaves, microscopic organisms, molecules of dissolved carbon, tells the story of the life the river has nourished and been nourished by. But rivers are not just surface phenomena. Much of their story happens underground, in the vast, slow circulation of groundwater that connects all surface water to the deep aquifers that store water for decades, centuries, even millennia. When rain soaks into the soil, it begins a journey that may take it through layers of rock and sediment, through underground caverns and microscopic pore spaces, following the subtle gradients that pull water always toward lower elevations. Groundwater moves like an underground river, but in slow motion, sometimes just inches per year, sometimes feet per day, depending on the geology it encounters. This underground flow is the hidden foundation of all surface water systems. Springs are places where this underground river returns to the surface, bringing with it water that may have fallen as rain months or years or even decades ago. Think of aquifers as vast underground libraries, storing not just water, but information about past climates. Scientists can read the chemical signatures in deep groundwater to understand what the weather was like when that water first fell as rain. Water trapped in aquifers during ice ages carries the chemical signature of much colder climates. Water from wet periods carries different mineral signatures than water from dry periods. Each underground reservoir is an archive of ancient weather patterns, a liquid memory of climates long past. The patient journey of groundwater creates some of the most stable and reliable water sources on Earth. While surface rivers rise and fall with the seasons, groundwater provides a steady base flow that keeps rivers running even during dry periods. The cool, constant temperature of springs creates unique habitats where specialized plants and animals can thrive. Some groundwater systems are so ancient that they contain water that fell as rain during the last ice age, water that has been slowly moving through rock for thousands of years. But all water, whether it travels quickly along the surface or slowly through underground passages, eventually finds its way to the sea. The ocean is the ultimate destination of every river, the great mixing bowl where all the stories carried by flowing water eventually converge. At river mouths, where fresh water meets salt water, something magical happens. The sediment that has been carried sometimes thousands of miles is finally deposited, building deltas and estuaries that are among the most fertile and productive ecosystems on Earth. The Amazon River delivers more than 200 million tons of sediment to the Atlantic Ocean every year, sediment that contains the pulverized remains of the Andes Mountains and the organic matter of the world's largest rainforest. The Mississippi River carries the agricultural wealth of the American Midwest to the Gulf of Mexico, where it creates vast underwater plumes of nutrients that support some of the ocean's most productive fisheries. But the story doesn't end when rivers reach the sea. Evaporation lifts water molecules back into the atmosphere, where they become part of the great aerial rivers that flow around our planet. These atmospheric rivers are invisible but vast, carrying more water than the Amazon River as they drift with the wind patterns, bringing moisture from one continent to another. The water that evaporates from the Atlantic Ocean might fall as rain in the Amazon basin, where it will eventually flow back to the sea via the Amazon River, completing a cycle that spans continents. Ocean currents extend the river metaphor into the sea itself, creating underwater rivers that flow for thousands of miles, carrying water of different temperatures and salinities around the globe. The Gulf Stream is like a vast river flowing through the Atlantic, carrying warm water from the Caribbean to northern Europe, moderating the climate of an entire continent. The global thermohaline circulation is like a single, planet-spanning river that connects all the oceans, slowly circulating water from the surface to the depths and back again. Evaporation is water's rebirth, its return to the sky to begin the cycle anew. Every day, the sun lifts trillions of gallons of water from the Earth's surface, from oceans and lakes, from rivers and wetlands, from the leaves of plants and the surfaces of soils. This evaporation is powered by the same solar energy that drives photosynthesis, the same stellar fire that has been lifting water into the sky for billions of years. In the atmosphere, water molecules become part of the vast, three-dimensional river system of clouds and weather patterns. They may travel thousands of miles before condensing and falling as precipitation, carrying moisture from one part of the planet to another, connecting distant watersheds in a global circulation system that knows no political boundaries, no continental divisions. Close your eyes and imagine the rain that will fall 100 years from now. Some of the water molecules that will fall in that future rain are flowing in rivers right now, carrying stories from the mountains to the sea. Some are locked in ice in polar glaciers, waiting patiently for their turn to melt and flow again. Some are deep underground, moving slowly through aquifers, carrying the chemical memory of ancient climates toward eventual springs. The water that will nourish the forests of the 22nd century is the same water that nourished the forests of the Carboniferous period 300 million years ago. The rivers that will flow through landscapes we can't imagine will be carrying the same water that flows in our rivers today, still reading the story of the land, still carrying information from the high places to the low places, still connecting mountain to sea in the endless circulation that keeps our planet alive. Every river is both ancient and eternally young, carrying water that has flowed for billions of years through channels that are constantly changing. The Colorado River that carved the Grand Canyon no longer reaches the sea, diverted for human use, but its water continues its journey through other pathways, through irrigation canals and city pipes, through the bodies of people and plants, eventually evaporating back into the atmosphere to fall again as rain somewhere else in the vast watershed of the world. In rivers, we see the patient work of time itself, the slow sculpture of landscapes, the constant renewal that keeps our planet's circulation flowing. Every stream is a thread in the vast fabric of the hydrologic cycle. Every river, a chapter in the long story of water's journey from sky to sea and back to sky again. As you listen to water flowing tonight, whether it's rain on your roof, a stream outside your window, or just the quiet sound of water moving through pipes in your home, remember that you're hearing one of the oldest songs on Earth, the endless music of water finding its way home to the sea. Now let's journey inward, into the most intimate water cycle of all the circulation that happens within your own body. As you rest there, breathing slowly, your heart is beating steadily, pumping about 5 liters of blood through 60,000 miles of blood vessels every single minute. This internal river system is your personal water cycle, a microscopic version of the great hydrologic circulation that spans the planet. Your blood is mostly water, about 55% of blood volume is plasma, and plasma is roughly 90% water. So as your heart beats, it's really pumping water that carries dissolved oxygen and nutrients to every cell in your body, water that picks up waste products and carries them away for disposal. Your circulatory system is like a vast irrigation network, delivering life-sustaining moisture to the desert of your tissues, keeping every cell bathed in the fluid it needs to function. Think of your heart as a patient pump that has been working since before you were born, before you took your first breath. It started beating when you were just 3 weeks old in the womb, and it will continue its steady rhythm for your entire life, pushing water and dissolved substances through your body in an endless circulation. Over the course of an average lifetime, your heart will beat about 2.5 billion times, pumping roughly 200 million liters of blood, enough to fill a small lake. But the story of water in your body goes far deeper than just your bloodstream. Every cell in your body is its own tiny ocean, a microscopic droplet of ancient seawater maintained at precisely the right salt concentration to keep the molecular machinery of life functioning. About 2/3 of your body's water is inside your cells, creating the aqueous environment where all the chemistry of life takes place. This cellular water is not static, it's constantly flowing, constantly being exchanged. Water molecules move freely across cell membranes, carrying nutrients in and waste products out, maintaining the delicate balance of salt and water that keeps cells alive. Each of your 37 trillion cells is like a tiny island in an internal archipelago, surrounded by water, dependent on the constant circulation of fluid for its survival. Your kidneys are the quiet heroes of this internal water cycle, working 24 hours a day to filter your blood and maintain the precise chemical balance your body needs. These two organs, each about the size of your fist, process about 1,700 liters of blood every day, roughly 400 times your body's total blood volume. They are like incredibly sophisticated water treatment plants, removing waste while conserving the water and essential substances your body needs to keep. The engineering of the kidney is breathtaking in its precision. Each kidney contains about 1 million tiny filtration units called nephrons, each one a microscopic marvel of biological engineering. Blood flows into these nephrons under pressure, and water and dissolved substances are filtered out through a membrane so fine that only molecules smaller than proteins can pass through. Then, as this filtered fluid flows through the twisting tubules of the nephron, the kidney carefully reabsorbs the water and nutrients your body needs while allowing waste products to be carried away in urine. This process is so efficient that your kidneys recycle about 99% of the water they filter, returning it to your bloodstream while concentrating waste products for elimination. The water in your urine is the small fraction that your kidneys have determined your body can spare, carrying with it the dissolved waste products that would poison you if they accumulated. But water leaves your body through other pathways too. Every breath you exhale carries moisture with it. You can see this on a cold day, when your breath forms visible clouds in the air. Every day, you lose about 400 milliliters of water just through breathing. Water that evaporates from the warm, moist surfaces of your lungs and carries with it the heat that helps regulate your body temperature. Your skin is another pathway for water to leave your body. Even when you're not actively sweating, water evaporates continuously from your skin in a process called insensible perspiration. This invisible water loss helps cool your body and get rid of waste products dissolved in your body fluids. When you do sweat actively, your body opens up millions of tiny pores and releases water mixed with salt and other substances, using evaporation as a highly effective cooling system. Tears are another way your body recycles water, using it to clean and protect your eyes while also expressing emotions. The water in your tears comes from the same internal circulation that supplies all your tissues, but it's specially formulated with proteins and salts that help protect your eyes from infection and keep your corneas moist and clear. Plants, too, have their own internal water cycles, systems that are in many ways even more impressive than our own. Trees are essentially giant water pumps, drawing moisture up from the soil through their roots and transpiring it out through their leaves. A large oak tree can move 150 gallons of water from soil to sky every day, powered by nothing but evaporation from leaf surfaces and the cohesive properties of water molecules. This process, called transpiration, is how plants participate in the global water cycle. The water that enters through a tree's roots carries dissolved nutrients from the soil, delivering them to every leaf and branch. As water evaporates from leaf surfaces, it creates a gentle suction that pulls more water up from the roots, sometimes lifting it hundreds of feet against gravity. It's a hydraulic system of remarkable elegance, powered by the sun and the simple physics of evaporation. The stomata on leaf surfaces, those tiny pores that open and close to control gas exchange, also regulate water loss, allowing plants to balance their need for carbon dioxide with their need to conserve water. Each stoma is like a tiny mouth that can open to breathe in CO2 and breathe out oxygen and water vapor, or close to prevent water loss during dry periods. When you think about it, both plants and animals are essentially sophisticated water recycling systems, temporary collections of water molecules organized into living patterns. We gather water from the environment, use it to power the chemistry of life, and then release it back to the environment, often in a different form than we received it. Your body is about 60% water by weight, but this percentage changes throughout your life. Babies are about 75% water, elderly people about 50%. The water content of your tissues varies too. Your brain and heart are about 73% water, your lungs about 83%, your skin about 64%, even your bones are about 31% water. You are, quite literally, a walking, talking, thinking body of water, temporarily organized into the pattern that is you. Every day, you recycle about 2.5 liters of water through your body. This water comes from what you drink, what you eat. Many foods are surprisingly high in water content, and even from your own metabolism, which produces water as a byproduct when your cells burn nutrients for energy. You lose water through breathing, sweating, urination, and even in small amounts through your digestive system. We are temporary vessels for water's eternal journey. The water flowing through your body right now has been part of countless other lives, countless other stories. It has fallen as rain on ancient forests, has been part of primordial seas, has flowed in the bloodstreams of dinosaurs and the sap of prehistoric trees. After you, it will continue its journey, perhaps becoming part of a cloud, perhaps nourishing a plant, perhaps flowing in some future river toward the sea. There is something both humbling and comforting about this realization. We are not separate from the water cycle. We are part of it, participating in it with every breath, every heartbeat, every tear. Our bodies are temporary eddies in the great circulation of water that connects all life, brief patterns in the flow that will dissolve back into the current when our time is done. As you drift towards sleep tonight, feel the quiet circulation of water through your body. Feel your heart beating, pumping this ancient fluid through your veins. Feel the gentle work of your kidneys, filtering and recycling the water that keeps you alive. Feel the moisture in your breath as you exhale, releasing water back to the atmosphere to continue its eternal journey. You are made of water that has witnessed the entire history of Earth. Water that connects you to every other living thing. Water that will outlast you and carry forward some molecular memory of the time it spent keeping you alive. In the gentle circulation of water through your body, you participate in one of the universe's most beautiful recycling programs. ancient, patient, endlessly renewable, connecting every drop to every other drop in the vast, wet web of life on our blue planet. Sleep well, knowing that you are part of water's endless dance, a brief but beautiful note in the eternal song of circulation that keeps our world alive. Kneel down and place your hand on the earth, wherever you are right now. If you're indoors, imagine doing this. Feel the cool soil against your palm, the slight dampness, the gentle give of earth that has been enriched by countless cycles of life and death. Beneath your hand lies one of the most remarkable recycling systems in the universe, a living foundation that transforms death into life with such quiet efficiency that we rarely pause to marvel at its work. Soil is both graveyard and nursery, the place where all terrestrial life eventually returns and from which all new life springs. It is perhaps the ultimate paradox of our living world: death, creating the very foundation of life, decay becoming the source of all growth, endings transformed into beginnings with such elegant inevitability that it seems like magic. But soil is far from lifeless. In fact, it teems with more life than almost anywhere else on Earth. A single teaspoon of garden soil contains more organisms than there are people on our planet. Bacteria, fungi, protozoa, nematodes, arthropods, and countless other creatures so small we need microscopes to see them. These are the great decomposers, the patient recyclers who have been breaking down organic matter and rebuilding it into new forms for billions of years. The decomposer community works in shifts, like workers in a vast underground factory that never closes. When a leaf falls from a tree, the process begins almost immediately. Bacteria are usually the first to arrive, microscopic pioneers that begin breaking down the softer tissues, releasing enzymes that start the chemical transformation of complex organic molecules into simpler compounds. These bacteria work in the thin films of water that surround soil particles, creating microscopic ecosystems where the chemistry of decomposition unfolds. Then come the fungi, those mysterious organisms that are neither plant nor animal but something entirely their own. Fungal threads, called hyphae, spread through the soil and into dead organic matter, like invisible root systems, secreting enzymes that can break down even the toughest plant materials, cellulose, lignin, and other complex molecules that bacteria cannot easily digest. These hyphae are incredibly thin, sometimes just 2 micrometers wide, but they form networks so extensive that a single gram of soil can contain several miles of fungal threads. But here's where the story becomes truly extraordinary. These fungal networks don't just decompose dead matter, they also connect living plants in what scientists have come to call the wood wide web, a communication network that spans entire forests. Mycorrhizal fungi form partnerships with plant roots, trading nutrients for sugars in an exchange that has been going on for 400 million years, since the first plants colonized land. Through these fungal networks, trees can share resources with their neighbors. A large, well-established tree might send surplus sugars through the mycorrhizal network to younger trees struggling in its shade. Trees under attack by insects can send chemical warnings through the network, alerting their neighbors to begin producing defensive compounds. Mother trees can even recognize their own offspring and preferentially share resources with them through these underground connections. The formation of humus, that dark, rich substance that makes soil fertile, is decomposition's masterpiece. Humus is what remains after organic matter has been thoroughly processed by the decomposer community, broken down and reformed into stable compounds that can persist in soil for decades or even centuries. It's like the concentrated essence of all the life that has passed through this patch of earth, reduced to its most essential elements but somehow retaining the capacity to nourish new life. Earthworms are among nature's most accomplished recycling engineers, though they work so quietly that we often forget they're there. These simple creatures, with no eyes or ears or complex brain, are constantly reshaping the soil around us. They consume dead organic matter and soil, grinding it in their muscular gizzards, mixing it with digestive enzymes, and excreting it as worm castings that are among the most nutrient-rich substances on Earth. A single earthworm can process its own body weight in organic matter every day, and in healthy soil, there might be several hundred earthworms per square meter. Over the course of a year, the earthworms in an acre of soil can move 18 tons of earth, creating the loose, well-aerated structure that plant roots need to grow. They are literally eating the landscape and rebuilding it from the inside out, one casting at a time. The soil also serves as one of Earth's great carbon banks, storing more carbon than the atmosphere and all the world's vegetation combined. When plants die, much of their carbon is broken down and released back to the atmosphere as CO2, but some of it becomes part of the stable organic matter in soil. In the rich soils of grasslands and forests, this carbon can remain locked away for centuries, representing the accumulated photosynthesis of countless plants, the stored sunlight of decades or even centuries of growing seasons. This carbon storage is happening right now, beneath your feet. Every fallen leaf, every dead root, every bit of organic matter that enters the soil has the potential to become part of this vast underground carbon reservoir. The decomposer community carefully processes this material, releasing some carbon back to the atmosphere while incorporating some into the stable humus that enriches the soil and stores carbon for the long term. The microscopic world of soil is so complex that we're still discovering new aspects of how it works. Soil bacteria don't just decompose organic matter, they also form intricate relationships with plant roots, helping plants access nutrients, protecting them from diseases, and even influencing plant growth and health in ways we're only beginning to understand. Some bacteria can fix nitrogen from the atmosphere, making this essential nutrient available to plants. Others can break down toxic compounds, cleaning contaminated soil through natural biological processes. The formation of soil itself is a story of patient recycling on a geological timescale. Soil begins with the weathering of rock, a process that can take thousands of years to create just a few inches of basic mineral soil. But as organic matter accumulates and the decomposer community establishes itself, this basic mineral foundation is transformed into something far more complex and alive, a dynamic, breathing ecosystem that supports most of terrestrial life. Different types of soil tell different stories about the landscapes they support. The black soils of the Great Plains preserve the carbon of vast grasslands, the accumulated roots and shoots of prairie plants that grew and died over thousands of years. The red soils of tropical regions reflect the intense weathering that happens in hot, wet climates, where iron oxides give the earth its rusty color. The thin, rocky soils of mountain slopes tell stories of steep terrain and harsh conditions, where erosion is faster than soil formation. In healthy soil, the recycling never stops. Dead plant material is constantly being broken down and rebuilt into new forms. Nutrients are continuously circulated between the organic and mineral components of soil. Water moves through the soil, carrying dissolved nutrients to plant roots and carrying away waste products. The entire system is in constant motion, constantly processing, constantly recycling, constantly transforming death into the foundation for new life. Place your hand on the earth. Feel the quiet work happening beneath. In the darkness under your fingers, billions of microscopic organisms are busy with the ancient work of decomposition, breaking down the complex molecules of yesterday's life and rebuilding them into the simple nutrients that will feed tomorrow's growth. Fungal networks are quietly sharing resources between plants. Earthworms are processing organic matter into rich castings. Bacteria are fixing nitrogen and cycling nutrients. This is perhaps the most fundamental recycling system on Earth, the one that all others depend on, the one that transforms the waste of life into the foundation of new life. Without soil and its community of decomposers, the Earth would be covered with the accumulated remains of billions of years of life, with nowhere for new life to take root. Instead, the soil quietly, patiently, constantly transforms endings into beginnings, death into life, waste into wealth. As you rest tonight, remember that you are supported not just by the bed you lie on, but by the living foundation beneath it, by soil that has been enriched by countless cycles of growth and decay, by the patient work of decomposers who ask for nothing but give everything, by the underground networks that connect all terrestrial life in a vast web of mutual support and recycling. The soil beneath our feet is one of Earth's greatest treasures, a living, breathing recycling system that transforms death into life with such quiet efficiency that it seems like the most natural thing in the world. And perhaps it is. Perhaps this is what the universe does, transforms endings into beginnings, breakdown into breakthrough, death into the very foundation of life itself. In the quiet of a forest, among the fallen leaves and decaying logs, something extraordinary is happening that most of us never see. Beneath the visible mushrooms that push up through the forest floor lies one of the most sophisticated networks on Earth, a fungal internet that connects trees, shares resources, and processes information in ways that make our digital networks seem almost primitive by comparison. Fungi are among evolution's most elegant recyclers, master chemists who have been perfecting the art of decomposition for over 1 billion years. They occupy a unique position in the web of life, neither plant nor animal, but something entirely their own. Organisms that feed by secreting enzymes into their environment and then absorbing the nutrients that result from this external digestion. They are the great dismantlers, the patient alchemists, who can break down the most complex organic molecules and transform them into forms that other organisms can use. When you see a mushroom, you're looking at just the tip of the iceberg, literally the fruiting body of a vast organism that exists mostly underground. The real fungus is the mycelium, those thread-like networks of hyphae that spread through soil and dead organic matter like underground root systems. A single fungal organism can span hundreds or even thousands of acres, making some fungi among the largest living things on Earth. The honey fungus in Oregon's Blue Mountains is perhaps the most famous example, a single organism that covers 2,385 acres and is estimated to be between 2,000 and 8,000 years old. This massive fungus has been quietly recycling organic matter in these forests for millennia, breaking down dead trees and returning their nutrients to the soil, all while maintaining its genetic identity as a single, enormous organism. It's a kind of ecological immortality, not the immortality of never dying, but the immortality of constantly recycling, constantly renewing, constantly transforming death into new life. But fungi do much more than just decompose dead matter. Many species form intricate partnerships with living plants, creating some of the most important symbiotic relationships in nature. Mycorrhizal fungi wrap around or penetrate plant roots, creating hybrid structures where fungus and plant root become almost indistinguishable. Through these connections, fungi trade nutrients for sugars in an exchange that benefits both partners. The fungus extends the reach of the plant's root system by hundreds or thousands of times, threading through soil particles to access water and nutrients that the plant could never reach on its own. In return, the plant provides the fungus with sugars produced through photosynthesis energy from sunlight transformed into chemical form. It's a partnership that has been so successful that most plants on Earth depend on it. Over 90% of plant species form mycorrhizal associations. But here's where fungi reveal their most remarkable secret. These mycorrhizal networks don't just connect one plant to one fungus, they connect entire forests in vast, interconnected webs of communication and resource sharing. A single mycorrhizal network can connect hundreds of trees, allowing them to share water, nutrients, and even information across great distances. Through these networks, forests become superorganisms, collective entities where individual trees support each other in ways that blur the boundaries between self and other. A tree that's thriving in a sunny spot can share excess sugars with trees struggling in the shade. Trees under attack by insects or diseases can send chemical warnings through the network, alerting their neighbors to prepare their defenses. Mother trees can recognize and preferentially support their own offspring through these underground connections. The chemistry of decomposition that fungi perform is like a masterclass in organic chemistry, but conducted entirely without test tubes or laboratory equipment. Fungal enzymes can break down lignin, the complex polymer that makes wood hard and rot-resistant. They can process cellulose, the structural component of plant cell walls. They can even break down some of the toughest organic compounds, transforming materials that would otherwise persist in the environment for decades or centuries. Different fungi specialize in decomposing different materials, creating a diverse community of recyclers that together can process almost any organic matter. Some focus on fresh leaf litter, others on decaying wood, still others on the complex organic compounds in soil. This specialization ensures that nothing goes to waste. There's always some fungus that can break down whatever organic matter the forest produces. Spores are fungi's solution to the challenge of spreading to new locations and surviving harsh conditions. These microscopic packages contain everything needed to start a new fungal colony, wrapped in protective coatings that can survive extremes of temperature, desiccation, and radiation. Spores can remain viable for years or even decades, waiting for the right conditions to germinate and begin the process of decomposition anew. Some spores are dispersed by wind, drifting through the atmosphere like microscopic seeds. Others are spread by animals. The bright colors and enticing smells of some mushrooms are advertisements designed to attract animals that will eat the fruiting bodies and spread the spores in their droppings. Still others use more active methods, literally shooting their spores into the air with tiny biological cannons. The discovery of antibiotics began with fungi, specifically with Alexander Fleming's observation that a penicillium mold could kill bacteria. This wasn't an accident. Fungi and bacteria have been engaged in chemical warfare for millions of years, each evolving compounds to inhibit the growth of competitors. What we call antibiotics are really fungal weapons in this microscopic arms race, compounds that fungi produce to clear space for themselves in the competitive world of decomposition. But fungi don't just compete, they also collaborate. In nature, decomposition is usually a community effort, with bacteria breaking down some compounds, fungi tackling others, and various other organisms contributing their own specialized abilities. The result is a highly efficient recycling system that can process organic matter much more completely than any single type of organism could manage alone. The ecological roles of fungi extend far beyond decomposition. Many fungi form partnerships with algae to create lichens, those crusty or leafy organisms that can colonize bare rock and slowly break it down into soil. Other fungi parasitize insects, turning them into zombie-like creatures that spread fungal spores before dying. Still others form partnerships with tree roots so intimate that the tree cannot survive without its fungal partner. In agricultural soils, mycorrhizal fungi play crucial roles in plant health and productivity. They help crops access phosphorus and other nutrients, protect plant roots from diseases, and improve soil structure. Some of the most productive agricultural systems in the world depend on maintaining healthy populations of soil fungi, recognizing that these organisms are essential partners in the production of food. The study of fungal networks has revealed information processing capabilities that seem almost intelligent. When a fungal network detects a rich source of nutrients, it can redirect growth toward that resource, effectively learning about its environment and adapting its behavior accordingly. Networks can route resources around damaged areas, find the most efficient paths between resource patches, and even exhibit what appears to be memory responding more quickly to resources they've encountered before. In every handful of forest floor, there are more connections than in all our digital networks. The fungal networks that thread through soil create a communication system of staggering complexity, with each hyphal strand potentially carrying chemical signals. Each intersection, a node where information can be processed and redirected. The bandwidth of these biological networks, measured in terms of different chemical signals they can carry simultaneously, far exceeds anything we've created technologically. As you walk through a forest, remember that beneath your feet lies one of the most sophisticated information networks on Earth. Every step you take passes over millions of fungal connections, over underground highways where trees share resources and information, over recycling systems that have been operating for hundreds of millions of years, with an efficiency that makes our human recycling efforts look crude by comparison. The mushrooms you see fruiting from the forest floor are like the visible tips of vast icebergs, brief glimpses of enormous organisms that exist mostly out of sight. They are the fruiting bodies of recycling systems that span ecosystems, that connect forests in webs of mutual support, that transform death into life with patient, quiet efficiency. Tonight, as you rest, consider the fungal networks working quietly in the darkness, processing the fallen leaves of autumn, breaking down the dead wood of ancient trees, sharing resources between living plants, maintaining the underground connections that make forests possible. They are nature's master recyclers, the patient alchemists who ensure that nothing is ever truly lost, only transformed into new possibilities, new connections, new life. In the secret life of fungi, we find one of nature's most beautiful examples of how cooperation and competition, breakdown and building up, death and life are all part of the same vast, interconnected web of existence. The mushroom's secret is that there are no secrets, only endless connections, endless recycling, endless transformation of what was into what will be. Let's step back now and consider the deepest level of recycling, the most fundamental transformation of all, the return of complex life to its elemental components, the breaking down of molecules into atoms, the recycling of the basic building blocks of existence itself. When decomposition is complete, when all the organic molecules have been dismantled and all the complex structures have been simplified, what remains are the elements themselves, ready to begin new adventures in new combinations, new forms, new lives. This is atomic recycling, the ultimate conservation program where nothing is ever truly lost, only endlessly rearranged. Every atom in your body, every carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, phosphorus, sulfur, has been part of countless other forms of matter throughout its existence. The carbon in your bones was once atmospheric CO2, once part of ancient trees, once dissolved in primordial seas. The nitrogen in your DNA was once part of the atmosphere, captured by bacteria and transformed into the amino acids that build proteins. Death, in this atomic view, is not an ending but a liberation, the moment when the elements that have been temporarily organized into the pattern of a living being are released back into the great cosmic inventory, free to participate in new combinations, new structures, new possibilities. It's perhaps the most democratic process in nature. Rich or poor, simple or complex, every organism eventually contributes its atoms back to the common pool from which all future life will be built. Consider phosphorus, one of life's most essential elements, and also one of the most interesting from a recycling perspective. Unlike carbon, nitrogen, and oxygen, which exist in gaseous forms and cycle relatively quickly through the atmosphere, phosphorus has no gaseous phase at normal Earth temperatures. It cycles slowly, patiently, through rocks and soil and living tissues and back to rocks again in a process that can take millions of years. Phosphorus is the limiting element in many ecosystems, the nutrient that determines how much life a given environment can support. It's essential for DNA, RNA, ATP, the energy currency of cells, and the phospholipids that make up cell membranes. Yet there's no vast atmospheric reservoir of phosphorus that organisms can tap into. Instead, all the phosphorus that cycles through living systems must come from the slow weathering of rocks, the patient dissolution of phosphate minerals by water and acids. When organisms die, the phosphorus in their tissues is gradually released back to the soil, where it can be taken up by new generations of life. But some of this phosphorus is always being lost to erosion, washed into rivers, and eventually into the sea, where much of it settles into deep ocean sediments. Over geological time, these sediments may be uplifted into new mountain ranges, where the cycle of weathering and erosion can begin anew, but this process takes millions of years. The story of phosphorus is the story of scarcity, creating value, of a limiting resource that must be carefully conserved and recycled. In nature, there's intense competition for available phosphorus, and organisms have evolved remarkably efficient ways to capture, use, and recycle this precious element. The mycorrhizal fungi we discussed earlier are particularly important in phosphorus cycling, helping plants access phosphorus from soil in exchange for carbon from photosynthesis. Nitrogen tells a different story, one of abundance that's locked away and scarcity that drives innovation. The atmosphere is 78% nitrogen, an enormous reservoir containing vastly more nitrogen than exists in all living things combined. But this atmospheric nitrogen is in the form of N2, molecules where two nitrogen atoms are held together by one of the strongest chemical bonds in nature. Most organisms cannot break this bond, and therefore cannot access this vast atmospheric reservoir. Only certain bacteria have evolved the ability to fix atmospheric nitrogen, breaking the strong N2 bond and incorporating nitrogen into biological molecules. This process, called nitrogen fixation, requires enormous amounts of energy. The enzyme that catalyzes it, nitrogenase, is one of the most energy-expensive biological processes known. But it's so valuable that many plants have evolved partnerships with nitrogen-fixing bacteria, providing them with energy and shelter in exchange for access to fixed nitrogen. When organisms die, the nitrogen in their proteins and nucleic acids is gradually broken down and released back to the environment. Some of it remains in organic forms in soil, some is converted to ammonium, some to nitrate, and some is released back to the atmosphere as N2, completing the cycle. This nitrogen cycle is mediated by several different types of bacteria, each specializing in different steps of the process. Sulfur cycles through the Earth system in forms that connect land, sea, and sky in beautiful chemical loops. Sulfur is essential for life. It's a key component of many amino acids, and therefore of proteins. But like phosphorus, it exists in forms that require biological processing to become available to most organisms. Sulfur-cycling bacteria play crucial roles in making sulfur available to other life forms. And these same bacteria were among the earliest life forms on Earth, thriving in the sulfur-rich environments of early oceanic systems. Some of the most dramatic sulfur cycling happens at deep-sea hydrothermal vents, where bacteria use the energy in hydrogen sulfide, a compound that's toxic to most life, to power chemosynthesis, creating organic matter without sunlight. These bacteria form the base of entire ecosystems that exist in complete darkness, recycling sulfur compounds and creating habitat for tube worms, crabs, and other creatures that have never seen the sunlight. Even rarer elements tell stories of cosmic recycling that span the history of the universe. The iron in your blood, the iron atoms at the center of every hemoglobin molecule that carries oxygen through your body, was forged in the heart of a dying star billions of years ago. When that star exploded in a supernova, it scattered iron and other heavy elements across space, where they eventually became part of the cloud of gas and dust that collapsed to form our solar system. This iron has been recycling through the Earth system for 4.5 billion years, sometimes locked in rocks, sometimes dissolved in ancient seas, sometimes part of living organisms. The iron in your blood may have once been part of trilobites crawling on Cambrian sea floors, part of the first land plants, part of dinosaur bones, part of countless other life forms throughout Earth's history. The beautiful mathematics of stoichiometry, the precise ratios in which elements combine to form compounds, reveals nature's accounting system in action. Every chemical reaction must balance. Every atom that goes into a reaction must come out in some form. Every element must be conserved. It's a bookkeeping system of absolute precision, where nothing can be created or destroyed, only rearranged. This atomic accounting creates what ecologists call biogeochemical cycles, the circulation of elements through living and non-living systems, the constant recycling that keeps essential nutrients available for life. Carbon cycles through atmosphere, oceans, and living things. Nitrogen cycles through atmosphere, soil, and organisms. Phosphorus cycles slowly through rocks, soil, and life. Each element follows its own pathway, its own timeline, its own story of recycling and renewal. The ratios in which organisms need these elements are remarkably consistent across different forms of life. The Redfield ratio, discovered in marine plankton, describes the consistent proportions of carbon, nitrogen, and phosphorus in living tissue, roughly 106 to 1, 6 to 1. This ratio appears again and again in different organisms and different environments, suggesting something fundamental about the chemistry of life itself. As decomposition proceeds and complex organic molecules are broken down, these elemental ratios are maintained, ensuring that the nutrients released by decay are in proportions that can support new life. It's as if nature has a built-in quality control system, ensuring that the recycling process produces exactly what the next generation of life will need. Nothing is ever lost, only transformed into new possibilities. The atoms that make up your body right now have been part of countless other forms of matter throughout their existence. They have been part of stars and planets, oceans and atmospheres, bacteria and dinosaurs, ancient forests and flowering meadows. After you, they will continue their journey, becoming part of new combinations, new structures, new lives. There's something deeply comforting about this atomic view of recycling. It means that we are all made of the same fundamental ingredients, all participating in the same vast circulation of matter that has been going on since the universe began. The boundaries between self and other, between life and death, between past and future, become beautifully blurred when we realize that we are all temporary arrangements of eternal atoms. As you rest tonight, remember that you are made of stardust, literally composed of elements forged in stellar cores and scattered across space by cosmic explosions. You are a brief but beautiful arrangement of atoms that have been cycling through the universe for billions of years. Atoms that will continue their cosmic journey for billions of years to come. In the patient recycling of elements, we find the deepest truth about existence, that nothing is ever truly lost, only endlessly transformed, endlessly renewed, endlessly rearranged into new patterns, new possibilities, new forms of beauty and complexity and wonder. The elements are patient, eternal recyclers, the fundamental building blocks that make all stories possible, including the story that is you. Look up at the stars tonight, if you can see them from where you are. Each point of light you see is a vast nuclear furnace, a stellar factory where the elements that make up your body are being cooked in fires so intense that they would be unimaginable anywhere else in the universe. The stars are nature's original recycling centers, taking the simplest elements, hydrogen and helium, and forging them into all the heavier elements that make complex chemistry, and therefore life, possible. In the beginning, the universe contained only hydrogen, helium, and tiny traces of lithium. Everything else, every carbon atom in your body, every oxygen molecule you breathe, every iron atom in your blood, every calcium atom in your bones was created inside the core of a star, where temperatures reach tens of millions of degrees and pressures are billions of times greater than anything on Earth. This process, called stellar nucleosynthesis, is perhaps the most fundamental recycling program in the universe. Stars gather the simple materials of space, mostly hydrogen gas from vast cosmic clouds, and use the intense heat and pressure in their cores to fuse these light elements into heavier ones. It's nuclear alchemy on a cosmic scale, transforming the basic ingredients of the universe into the rich palette of elements that make planets, atmospheres, oceans, and life possible. The periodic table is essentially a stellar recipe book, with each element telling the story of where and how it was made. Hydrogen, the simplest and most abundant element, was created in the first few minutes after the Big Bang, when the universe was hot and dense enough for protons and neutrons to stick together. Helium was also made in those first moments, along with traces of lithium. But everything else, all 90-something naturally occurring elements heavier than lithium, required the intense conditions inside stars. In stellar cores, hydrogen nuclei are squeezed together so tightly that they overcome their natural electromagnetic repulsion and fuse into helium, releasing tremendous amounts of energy in the process. This is the same nuclear fusion that powers hydrogen bombs, but in stars it happens in a controlled, sustained way that can continue for millions or billions of years. The energy released by this fusion is what makes stars shine, what creates the light and heat that travel across vast distances to warm planets like Earth. As stars age and exhaust their hydrogen fuel, they begin fusing helium into heavier elements: carbon, oxygen, neon, magnesium. The most massive stars can continue this process, building elements layer by layer like an onion, with the heaviest elements forming in the core and lighter elements in shells around it. Silicon burning creates iron, nickel, and cobalt. But iron is where the process stops for most stars, because fusing iron requires more energy than it produces. When a massive star one more than about 8 times the mass of our Sun reaches this point, catastrophe is inevitable. Without the outward pressure of nuclear fusion to balance the inward pull of gravity, the star's core collapses in less than a second, creating a shock wave that tears through the star's outer layers and blasts them into space in what we call a supernova explosion. Supernovas are cosmic recycling events of unimaginable violence and beauty. In just a few seconds, these explosions release more energy than our Sun will produce in its entire 10 billion year lifetime. The shockwave that tears through the dying star creates temperatures and pressures so extreme that new elements can be forged in the explosion itself, elements heavier than iron that cannot be made by normal stellar fusion. But perhaps more importantly, supernovas scatter the elements created over the star's lifetime across vast regions of space. The carbon, oxygen, silicon, iron, and other heavy elements that were locked inside the star's core are suddenly dispersed into the surrounding interstellar medium, where they can become part of new generations of stars, planets, and eventually, life. The heavy elements' journey from stellar core to planetary surface is one of cosmic patience. After being scattered by a supernova, these elements may drift through space as part of vast clouds of gas and dust for millions of years before gravity begins to pull them together again. Slowly, over more millions of years, these enriched clouds collapse to form new stars and planetary systems, incorporating the recycled elements from previous generations of stars. For the heaviest elements, gold, platinum, uranium, even supernovas aren't violent enough to forge them in significant quantities. These elements require the most extreme events in the universe: the collision of neutron stars, When two of these incredibly dense stellar remnants spiral into each other and merge, they create conditions so extreme that the heaviest elements in the periodic table are formed in just seconds and then scattered into space. The gold in any jewelry you might be wearing was almost certainly created in one of these neutron star collisions, in a cataclysmic event that lasted mere moments but produced more gold than a typical star creates in its entire lifetime. The platinum in catalytic converters, the uranium used in nuclear power, all of these elements were forged in the most violent events the universe can produce, then patiently recycled through space until they became part of our solar system. The timescales involved in stellar recycling are almost incomprehensibly vast. Our Sun, a middle-aged star, has been fusing hydrogen into helium for about 4.6 billion years and will continue doing so for another 5 billion years or so. The most massive stars burn through their fuel much faster, living for only a few million years before exploding as supernovas. The smallest stars, red dwarfs, burn so slowly that they can continue shining for trillions of years longer than the current age of the universe. This means that stellar recycling operates on timescales that dwarf any recycling processes we see on Earth. The elements in your body may have been through several cycles of stellar birth, life, death, and rebirth over the 8 billion year history of the universe. The carbon in your cells may have been forged in a star that died before our solar system was even born, scattered into space, incorporated into new stellar systems, and eventually finding its way into the molecular machinery of life. The patience of stellar recycling is matched by its thoroughness. Every atom heavier than hydrogen and helium in the universe was created inside a star. The calcium in your bones was forged in a stellar core where temperatures reached 100 million degrees. The iron in your blood was created in the final moments of a massive star's life, just before it exploded and scattered its contents across space. The oxygen you breathe was made by nuclear fusion in a star that died billions of years ago, long before Earth existed. This cosmic recycling continues today. Right now, in stellar cores throughout the universe, hydrogen is being fused into helium, helium into carbon and oxygen into heavier elements. Right now, somewhere in the cosmos, a massive star is reaching the end of its life and preparing for the supernova explosion that will scatter its elemental wealth across space. Right now, the heavy elements from ancient stellar deaths are being incorporated into new planetary systems where they might someday become part of new forms of life. The stars are the universe's great recycling centers, patient factories that transform simple materials into complex ones that create the elemental diversity necessary for chemistry, geology, and biology. They are the reason we exist, not just because they provide the energy that powers life on planets like Earth, but because they literally created the materials from which we are made. As you look up at the night sky, remember that you are seeing your own history written in points of light. Every star is a factory producing the elements that make life possible. Every stellar death is a gift to future generations, scattering the materials for new worlds, new possibilities, new forms of beauty and complexity across the cosmic dark. Take a moment to consider your body not as a collection of organs and tissues, but as a temporary gathering of elements that have traveled through space and time to assemble themselves into the pattern that is you. You are quite literally made of stardust, composed of atoms that were forged in stellar cores billions of years ago, scattered across space by dying stars, and eventually incorporated into the planet we call home. Let's take an inventory of your cosmic heritage, element by element. Your body is about 65% oxygen by mass oxygen that was created by nuclear fusion in the cores of massive stars, where helium nuclei were slammed together under conditions of unimaginable heat and pressure. This oxygen has been recycling through the Earth system for 4.5 billion years, sometimes locked in rocks, sometimes part of the atmosphere, sometimes part of the water you drink, and now temporarily part of you. About 18% of your body is carbon, and every single carbon atom in your cells tells a story of stellar alchemy. Carbon is created when 3 helium nuclei collide simultaneously in a process so improbable that it was once thought impossible until astronomers realized that the abundance of carbon in the universe required conditions inside stars to make this triple alpha process not just possible, but inevitable. The carbon in your DNA, in your proteins, in every organic molecule in your body, was cooked in stellar furnaces and scattered into space by dying stars. The calcium that gives strength to your bones and teeth, about 1.5% of your body mass, has an even more dramatic origin story. Calcium is produced in the final stages of massive stars' lives, when silicon burning creates a cascade of nuclear reactions that build up the periodic table element by element. When these stars exploded as supernovas, they scattered this calcium across space, where it eventually became part of the rocky materials that formed our solar system, and ultimately, part of the minerals that make your skeleton. Perhaps most poetically, the iron in your blood, the iron atoms at the heart of every hemoglobin molecule that carries oxygen through your circulatory system, was created in the cores of dying stars in their final moments before supernova explosions. Iron is the endpoint of normal stellar fusion, the element that signals a massive star's approaching death, because fusing iron requires more energy than it produces. Every iron atom in your blood was forged in these stellar death throes, and then scattered into space, carrying within its atomic structure the memory of that cosmic catastrophe. Your body also contains traces of much rarer elements with even more exotic origins. The tiny amounts of gold in your body, yes, you do contain measurable amounts of gold, were almost certainly created in the collision of neutron stars, those incredibly dense remnants of supernova explosions. When two neutron stars spiral into each other in the ultimate cosmic catastrophe, they create conditions so extreme that the heaviest elements in the periodic table are forged in seconds and then scattered across space. The story of how these stellar elements became part of you begins 4.6 billion years ago, when our solar system formed from a collapsing cloud of gas and dust that had been enriched by billions of years of stellar recycling. This cloud contained all the elements produced by previous generations of stars, the oxygen, carbon, silicon, iron, and dozens of other elements that would become the building blocks for planets, atmospheres, oceans, and eventually life. As this cloud collapsed under its own gravity, the heavier elements began to clump together, forming the rocky materials that would become the inner planets. Earth accreted from countless collisions of these rocky building blocks, each impact adding more stellar material to our growing planet. The iron that sank to form Earth's core, the silicon and oxygen that make up the rocky mantle and crust, the carbon that would eventually become part of life, all of it was recycled stellar material. But here's something remarkable to consider. You are not just made of ancient stardust, but of recycled earthly materials as well. The atoms in your body have been part of countless other forms of matter throughout Earth's history. The carbon in your cells may have once been atmospheric CO2, may have been part of ancient forests that became coal deposits, may have been dissolved in primordial seas where the first life evolved. The calcium in your bones may have once been part of the shells of ancient marine organisms, compressed into limestone over millions of years, then dissolved and carried by groundwater until it eventually became part of the food chain that brought it to you. The iron in your blood may have been part of iron ore deposits, may have been dissolved in ancient oceans, may have cycled through countless other living beings before becoming part of your hemoglobin. This means that stellar recycling and earthly recycling are intimately connected. The atoms in your body have experienced both cosmic and terrestrial adventures, both stellar nucleosynthesis and biological metabolism, both the violence of supernovas and the gentle chemistry of life. You are a meeting point where cosmic and biological recycling intersect, where stellar materials temporarily organize themselves into the complex patterns of living matter. The anthropic wonder of this situation is almost overwhelming. The universe has spent 13.8 billion years recycling materials, creating conditions where atoms forged in stellar cores can assemble themselves into beings capable of understanding their own cosmic origins. The elements created by dying stars have organized themselves into nervous systems that can contemplate the stars, into eyes that can see across cosmic distances, into minds that can unravel the nuclear physics that created them. You are the universe becoming conscious of itself, stellar materials arranged in patterns complex enough to understand the stellar processes that created them. The atoms in your brain that are thinking these thoughts right now were forged in stellar cores, scattered by cosmic explosions, recycled through planetary processes, and assembled into the neural networks that make consciousness possible. Consider the recycling rates involved in your cosmic heritage. The atoms in your body are replaced regularly through metabolism. You eat, breathe, and drink, constantly taking in new materials and releasing others back to the environment. The carbon atoms in your body have an average residence time of about 10 years, meaning that most of the carbon that makes up your tissues today wasn't part of you a decade ago. The calcium in your bones is replaced more slowly, over periods of decades, but it too is constantly recycling. This means that you are not a fixed collection of atoms, but a dynamic pattern that atoms flow through. The atoms that make up your body today have had countless previous incarnations. They have been parts of other people, other living things, other forms of matter throughout Earth's history. And after they leave your body, they will continue their journey, becoming parts of other living beings, other forms of matter, in the endless circulation that connects all things. Some of the atoms in your body right now may have been part of dinosaurs, part of ancient trees, part of the first living cells that evolved in primordial seas. The oxygen you just breathed in may have been released by photosynthesis in a prehistoric forest. The carbon in your fingernails may have once been part of a woolly mammoth. The iron in your blood may have flowed through the circulatory systems of countless other creatures throughout evolutionary history. And looking forward, the atoms that are currently part of you will continue their cosmic journey long after you're gone. They will become parts of other living beings, will participate in other forms of matter, will continue the ancient circulation that connects all things across space and time. In a very real sense, you are immortal not as a pattern or consciousness, but as a collection of recycled stellar materials that will continue their cosmic adventures for billions of years to come. There is something deeply comforting about this cosmic perspective on recycling. It means that you are connected to the entire history of the universe, that you are made of materials that have witnessed the formation of galaxies, the birth and death of countless stars, the evolution of our solar system, the entire history of life on Earth. You carry within your body the memory of cosmic events, the accumulated history of 13.8 billion years of universal evolution. As you prepare for sleep tonight, remember that you are stardust that has learned to dream, cosmic materials that have organized themselves into consciousness, recycled stellar elements that have developed the ability to contemplate their own origins. You are both ancient and temporary, both cosmic and earthly, both matter and meaning, a beautiful, brief arrangement of eternal atoms in the ongoing symphony of universal recycling. As we look ahead into the deep future, into timescales that stretch far beyond human history and even beyond the expected lifetime of our sun, stellar recycling will continue its patient work, ensuring that the universe remains creative and dynamic for eons to come. The death of stars is not an ending, but a transformation, each stellar demise setting the stage for new possibilities, new combinations, new forms of cosmic complexity. Our own sun, that steady provider of energy that has made life on Earth possible for billions of years, is currently in the prime of its life, steadily fusing hydrogen into helium in its core. But like all stars, it will eventually exhaust its nuclear fuel in about 5 billion years. As the hydrogen in its core runs low, our sun will begin to change in ways that will fundamentally alter our solar system. First, it will expand into a red giant, swelling to perhaps 100 times its current size, its outer layers reaching out toward the orbit of Earth. The increased luminosity will make our planet uninhabitable long before the sun's surface actually reaches us. But this transformation represents a crucial phase in stellar recycling. As a red giant, the sun will begin fusing helium into carbon and oxygen in its core, creating new elements that didn't exist when it first formed. Eventually, our sun will shed its outer layers in a series of gentle pulsations, creating what astronomers call a planetary nebula, one of the most beautiful phenomena in the cosmos. These glowing shells of gas, illuminated by the hot stellar remnant at their center, are essentially recycling events on a cosmic scale. The carbon, oxygen, and other elements created in the sun's core during its red giant phase will be dispersed into space, enriching the interstellar medium and providing raw materials for future generations of stars and planets. What remains of our sun will be a white dwarf, a hot, dense stellar remnant about the size of Earth, but containing roughly 60% of the sun's original mass. This white dwarf will slowly cool over trillions of years, gradually fading from white to yellow to red to brown to black. But its materials will persist essentially forever, a monument to billions of years of hydrogen fusion. Other stars will follow different paths toward recycling, depending on their mass. The most massive stars will continue to burn through heavier and heavier elements in their cores until they reach iron, at which point they will collapse and explode as supernovas, scattering their contents across vast regions of space and enriching the universe with heavy elements. These explosions will trigger the formation of new stars from the enriched gas clouds, continuing the cycle of stellar birth, death, and rebirth. Some stars that are not quite massive enough to become supernovas will instead collapse into neutron stars, objects so dense that a teaspoon of their material would weigh as much as a mountain. When two neutron stars eventually spiral into each other and merge, they create conditions extreme enough to forge the heaviest elements in the periodic table, continuing the cosmic recycling process through the most violent events the universe can produce. Even the smallest stars, the red dwarfs that burn their fuel so slowly they can shine for trillions of years, will eventually contribute to cosmic recycling. Their incredibly long lifetimes mean that red dwarfs born today will still be shining long after our sun has died, providing energy and potentially supporting life for timescales that are almost incomprehensible from a human perspective. Brown dwarfs, sometimes called failed stars, because they're not massive enough to sustain nuclear fusion, represent another form of cosmic patience. These objects slowly cool and fade over billions of years, but they preserve the materials from which they formed, essentially storing stellar materials for potential future recycling when they might be incorporated into other gravitational systems. The long view of stellar recycling reveals a universe of almost infinite patience and creativity. Over trillions of years, the cosmos will continue to recycle its materials through countless cycles of stellar birth, evolution, and death. Even as individual stars die, the elements they created will become parts of new stellar systems, new planets, possibly new forms of life that we cannot even imagine. The universe appears to be designed for recycling on timescales that dwarf any earthly process. The proton decay that some theories predict would eventually break down even atomic nuclei is thought to occur on timescales of 10 to the power of 34 years or longer, a time span so vast that the current age of the universe is just the tiniest fraction of a second by comparison. This suggests that the materials that make up our bodies, our planet, our solar system, will continue to be recycled through cosmic processes for periods of time that are essentially infinite from any human perspective. Our place in deep time is both humbling and comforting. We exist at a moment when the universe is young and energetic, when star formation is still active, when heavy elements are still being created and dispersed. We are part of a cosmic story that is still being written, temporary arrangements of ancient materials participating in the ongoing evolution of cosmic complexity. The elements that make up our bodies have already been through multiple cycles of stellar recycling, and they will continue to be recycled for eons to come. The carbon in our cells, the oxygen in our blood, the calcium in our bones, all of these materials will outlast not just our individual lives, but our species, our planet, our sun, possibly even our galaxy, continuing their cosmic journey through timescales that make all human concerns seem beautifully, peacefully insignificant. There is profound comfort in continuity, in knowing that stellar recycling ensures the universe will remain creative and generative for time periods that are essentially eternal. Even as individual structures, stars, planets, galaxies, possibly even universes come and go, the underlying materials persist, constantly rearranged into new patterns, new possibilities, new forms of beauty and complexity. The stellar recycling that created us continues around us every moment. Right now, in stellar cores throughout the cosmos, hydrogen is being fused into helium, helium into heavier elements, creating the raw materials for future worlds, future life, future consciousness. Right now, somewhere in the universe, a star is dying and scattering its elemental wealth into space, seeding the cosmos with the building blocks of tomorrow's possibilities. As you rest tonight, remember that you are part of this vast, patient recycling process that spans the entire history and future of the universe. The atoms that make up your body are both ancient and eternal, both unique in their current arrangement and universal in their cosmic origins. You are a temporary but beautiful note in the endless symphony of stellar recycling, a brief arrangement of cosmic materials that has learned to contemplate its own origins and destiny. In stellar recycling, we find the ultimate expression of the principle that nothing is ever truly lost, only transformed into new possibilities, new forms, new arrangements that continue the universe's endless exploration of what is possible with the materials it has to work with. The stars ensure that this exploration will continue for timescales so vast they approach eternity, guaranteeing that the cosmic story of which we are part will continue to unfold in ways we cannot imagine, but in patterns that will always involve the patient, creative recycling of the elements that make complexity and consciousness possible. Close your eyes and imagine the deepest level of reality, beneath atoms, beneath particles, beneath even the fabric of space and time itself. Here, in the quantum realm, we find the most fundamental recycling program of all the conservation of energy, the universe's most sacred law that ensures nothing can ever truly be created or destroyed, only endlessly transformed from one form into another. Energy is the universe's most precious currency, and like any well-managed economy, not a single unit of it can ever be lost or gained. Every joule of energy that exists today existed at the moment of the Big Bang, and every joule that will exist in the far future is already here, waiting to be transformed, recycled, reused in the endless dance of cosmic processes. Think about the energy flowing through your body right now. The warmth you feel, the electrical impulses racing through your neurons, the chemical reactions powering your cells, all of this energy has been recycled countless times throughout the history of the universe. The energy that's keeping your heart beating was once locked in the nuclear bonds of hydrogen atoms in the core of our sun, where it was released through fusion and traveled 93 million miles as sunlight to reach Earth. But that energy's journey began much earlier. It was originally created in the first moments after the Big Bang, when the universe was a seething cauldron of pure energy, slowly cooling and condensing into matter. Some of that primordial energy became locked in the mass of particles. Remember Einstein's famous equation E=mc², which tells us that mass and energy are interchangeable. The protons in your body are essentially stored energy, concentrated into stable forms that have persisted for billions of years. The sunlight that eventually became the chemical energy in your cells took about 8 minutes to travel from the sun's surface to Earth. But it took somewhere between 10,000 and 170,000 years for that energy to work its way from the sun's core to its surface. This is because the interior of the sun is so dense that photons, particles of light and energy, can only travel tiny distances before being absorbed and re-emitted by other particles. Each photon follows a drunken, random walk through the sun's interior, slowly diffusing outward through countless absorption and emission events. Once that energy reached Earth, it might have been captured by a plant through photosynthesis, stored as chemical energy in glucose molecules, then consumed by an animal that used it to power muscle contractions, brain activity, or metabolic processes. When that animal died, decomposer organisms broke down its tissues, releasing some energy as heat and using some to power their own life processes. Throughout this entire chain, the total amount of energy remained constant. It was simply passed from one form to another, from one organism to another, in an endless circulation. But energy recycling operates on scales far grander than biological processes. In the depths of space, gravitational energy is constantly being converted to kinetic energy as objects fall toward each other, then back to gravitational potential energy as they swing around in orbits. The energy that powers galaxies as they rotate, that drives the collision of black holes, that fuels the expansion of the universe itself, all of this is the same energy that existed at the moment of cosmic birth, recycled and transformed over billions of years. The concept of heat death, the idea that the universe will eventually reach a state of maximum entropy where no more work can be done, seems to suggest an end to this cosmic recycling. In this far future state, all energy would be evenly distributed as low-temperature heat, and no further processes could occur because there would be no energy gradients to drive them. It's a scenario that sounds final, like the ultimate breakdown of the cosmic recycling system, but even heat death might not be the end of the story. Some theories suggest that quantum fluctuations could eventually create new regions of low entropy within this maximally entropic universe, like spontaneous bubbles of order arising from perfect disorder. Other theories propose that the universe itself might be cyclical, with periods of expansion followed by contraction and renewal, each cycle recycling the energy and matter of the previous universe into a new cosmic beginning. Quantum mechanics reveals even more exotic forms of energy, recycling happening at the smallest scales. The quantum vacuum, What we think of as empty space is actually seething with activity. Virtual particles constantly pop into existence in matter-antimatter pairs, borrow energy from the vacuum for brief moments, then annihilate each other and return that energy to the void. This happens everywhere, all the time, throughout all of space. These virtual particles are the universe's brief experiments with existence, quantum loan sharks that borrow energy from the vacuum with the promise to pay it back almost immediately. The shorter the loan period, the more energy they can borrow, according to Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. For the briefest possible moments, time intervals so short that they make nanoseconds seem like geological ages. Virtual particles can borrow enormous amounts of energy from the quantum vacuum. This process reveals something remarkable about the nature of reality. What we think of as empty space is actually a vast reservoir of potential energy, constantly fluctuating, constantly active, constantly engaged in microscopic acts of creation and destruction. The vacuum energy that fills all of space represents perhaps the largest energy reservoir in the universe, though it's normally hidden from us because we can only measure energy differences, not absolute energy levels. 0-point energy is the minimum energy that quantum systems can have, even at absolute zero temperature when all thermal motion has ceased. Even in the coldest, most isolated regions of space, quantum fields continue to fluctuate, maintaining this irreducible minimum of energy. This means that the universe can never reach a state of absolute stillness or perfect emptiness. There's always some quantum activity, some residual energy, some potential for change and transformation. The implications of 0-point energy for cosmic recycling are profound. It suggests that even in the ultimate heat death scenario, when all the stars have burned out and all the black holes have evaporated, the universe would still contain this vast reservoir of vacuum energy. Whether this energy could ever be harnessed to drive new processes, to create new forms of order and complexity, remains one of the great mysteries of physics. Recent discoveries in cosmology have revealed that the expansion of the universe is accelerating, driven by what we call dark energy, a mysterious form of energy that seems to be built into the fabric of space itself. This dark energy makes up about 68% of the total energy content of the universe. Yet we know almost nothing about what it is or how it works. It might be related to the vacuum energy we've been discussing, or it might be something else entirely. What we do know is that dark energy appears to be recycling the universe on the largest possible scale, constantly creating new space as the cosmos expands, potentially driving the ultimate fate of everything we can see. If the acceleration continues, galaxies will eventually be carried so far apart by the expansion of space that they disappear beyond each other's cosmic horizons, each becoming isolated islands in an increasingly empty universe. But even this scenario might not represent the end of recycling. Some theories suggest that the same quantum processes that create virtual particles in the vacuum might eventually create real particles, given enough time and space. In a universe with infinite time and infinite space, even the most improbable events become inevitable. New matter might spontaneously appear, new stars might form, new galaxies might arise from the quantum foam. The holographic principle, one of the most intriguing ideas in modern physics, suggests that all the information in a volume of space can be encoded on its boundary, like a hologram that contains three-dimensional information in a two-dimensional surface. This principle implies that information, rather than matter or energy, might be the most fundamental thing in the universe, and information follows its own conservation laws. If the holographic principle is correct, then the universe might be engaged in information recycling on scales we're only beginning to imagine. Every quantum event, every particle interaction, every thought you think might be creating information that becomes part of the cosmic holographic record. When black holes evaporate through Hawking radiation, they might not destroy the information that fell into them, but rather encode it in the radiation they emit, preserving it for future cosmic recycling processes. This brings us to one of the deepest questions in physics. What happens to information when it seems to be destroyed? When you burn a book, the information it contained seems to disappear. But the laws of quantum mechanics suggest that information cannot be destroyed, only scrambled or transformed. The information that was in the book is still there, encoded in the precise motions of every smoke particle, every photon of light, every vibration in the air. It's just in a form that's practically impossible to decode. The same principle might apply to biological information. When an organism dies, the information that specified its structure and behavior doesn't disappear, it's transformed and scattered into the environment through decomposition, through the breakdown of complex molecules into simpler ones, through the recycling of elements back into the ecosystem. In a sense, every organism that has ever lived has left an information shadow in the world, a pattern of changes that persists even after death. Energy conservation operates at every level of reality, from the quantum fluctuations in empty space to the rotation of galaxies. It's the universe's fundamental accounting system, the cosmic bookkeeping that ensures the total always balances, that every transformation is really a recycling process, that nothing is ever truly lost or gained, but only rearranged into new forms. As you lie there, feeling the warmth of your body, the gentle rhythm of your breathing, the quiet electrical activity of your brain, remember that you are a temporary arrangement of energy that has been recycling through the universe for billions of years. The thermal energy keeping you warm was once the kinetic energy of stellar collapse, was once the nuclear binding energy of hydrogen atoms, was once part of the primordial energy released in the Big Bang itself. The chemical energy powering your thoughts was once sunlight, was once nuclear fusion in stellar cores, was once the gravitational potential energy of collapsing gas clouds that formed the first stars. Every process in your body, every heartbeat, every breath, every firing neuron is powered by energy that has been recycled countless times through countless forms over the entire history of the cosmos. Tomorrow, when you wake up, that same energy will continue its eternal circulation. Some of it will be radiated away as heat, contributing to the gentle warming of the space around you. Some of it will be stored in new chemical bonds as your body rebuilds itself overnight. Some of it will power the electrical activity of dreams, those mysterious recycling processes where your brain reorganizes information and consolidates memories. And in the far future, long after you and I and everyone we know has returned to the cosmic recycling stream, that energy will continue its endless dance. It might power the fusion reactions in stars not yet born, might drive the thoughts of minds not yet evolved, might participate in processes and transformations we cannot even imagine, but it will never disappear, never be lost, never stop participating in the universe's endless exploration of what is possible with the energy it has to work with. In energy's eternal flow, we find the deepest truth about existence, that everything is connected across space and time, that nothing is ever truly separate or isolated, that we are all part of one vast, dynamic system engaged in constant transformation and renewal. The energy that animates you right now connects you to the Big Bang, to the formation of the first stars, to every process that has ever occurred in the history of the universe. Rest well tonight, knowing that you are part of energy's eternal dance, a beautiful, temporary arrangement of the universe's most precious currency, participating in recycling processes that will continue long after the last star burns out, long after the last black hole evaporates, perhaps even beyond the heat death of the cosmos itself, in forms of existence we cannot yet imagine, but that will always involve the same fundamental principle. Nothing lost, everything transformed, energy eternally recycled in the endless creativity of the quantum dance. Now let's explore perhaps the most mysterious form of recycling in the universe, the recycling of information itself. Information, unlike matter and energy, seems almost ghostly in its existence. Yet it might be the most fundamental aspect of reality, the invisible thread that connects every quantum event, every biological process, every thought you think to the vast information processing system that we call the universe. In the quantum realm, information takes on properties that seem almost magical. Quantum information can exist in superposition, being simultaneously in multiple states until it's observed or measured. It can be entangled, creating instantaneous connections across vast distances. It can be processed in ways that classical computers could never achieve, solving certain problems exponentially faster than any conventional calculation. But perhaps most remarkably, quantum information appears to be conserved. Just as energy cannot be created or destroyed, but only transformed from one form to another, information seems to follow similar conservation laws. When quantum systems interact, the total amount of information in the system remains constant. It can be scrambled, redistributed, or encoded in new forms, but it cannot simply disappear. This quantum information conservation has profound implications for how we understand memory, consciousness, and the nature of reality itself. Every interaction between particles creates information about that interaction, information that becomes part of the quantum state of the universe. When you observe a quantum system, you become entangled with it, and information about that observation becomes part of your own quantum state. Think about your brain right now as you process these words and form thoughts about quantum information. Your neurons are classical objects, but they operate in a quantum world, and the information processing happening in your mind might involve quantum effects we're only beginning to understand. Some theories suggest that consciousness itself might be a quantum information processing phenomenon, emerging from the complex quantum interactions in neural microtubules. But let's step back from these speculative frontiers and consider forms of information recycling that we understand better. DNA is perhaps the most sophisticated information storage and recycling system we know of, a molecular hard drive that has been copying, editing, and transmitting information for billions of years with remarkable fidelity. The information in your DNA has been recycling through living systems for over 3.8 billion years, passed down through an unbroken chain of reproduction from the earliest life forms to you. The genetic code itself, the way DNA uses sequences of 4 chemical bases to specify amino acids and proteins, appears to be nearly universal among all life on Earth, suggesting that this information encoding system was established very early in the history of life and has been recycling through all subsequent evolution. But DNA doesn't just store static information like a computer hard drive. It's a dynamic system that actively recycles information through processes of mutation, recombination, and selection. Every time DNA replicates, there's a chance for small copying errors that introduce new information into the system. Most of these mutations are neutral or harmful, but occasionally they create new capabilities, new possibilities, new forms of biological complexity. Sexual reproduction is essentially an information mixing and recycling process, combining genetic information from 2 parents to create offspring with novel combinations of traits. This genetic recombination constantly shuffles the deck of biological information, creating new arrangements of existing genes and allowing populations to explore new regions of evolutionary possibility space. The process of natural selection acts as an information filter, preserving genetic information that enhances survival and reproduction, while eliminating information that reduces fitness. But even eliminated genetic information isn't truly lost. It remains as part of the historical record encoded in the genomes of extinct species, in the fossil record, in the evolutionary relationships we can trace through comparative genomics. Epigenetic information adds another layer to biological information recycling. These chemical modifications to DNA and associated proteins can alter gene expression without changing the underlying genetic sequence, and some epigenetic marks can be passed from parents to offspring. This means that environmental experiences can create information that's transmitted across generations, a form of biological memory that allows organisms to pass information about environmental conditions to their descendants. Recent research has revealed that traumatic experiences can create epigenetic changes that are passed to children and grandchildren, suggesting that our bodies maintain information about environmental stresses across multiple generations. The children and grandchildren of Holocaust survivors show distinctive patterns of stress hormone regulation that appear to be linked to epigenetic changes triggered by their ancestors' experiences. This epigenetic inheritance represents a form of information recycling that blurs the boundaries between genetics and environment, between biology and experience. Information about environmental conditions becomes encoded in molecular form and recycled through generations, creating a kind of biological memory that helps organisms prepare for challenges their ancestors faced. Cultural evolution represents an even more rapid form of information recycling, operating on timescales of years or decades rather than generations. Ideas, technologies, languages, and social practices spread through human populations, undergo modification and selection, and evolve in ways that parallel biological evolution but operate much faster. The words you're reading right now are part of this cultural information recycling process. Language itself is a vast recycling system where sounds, meanings, and grammatical structures are constantly being reused, recombined, and transformed. The English language is built from recycled elements borrowed from Latin, Germanic languages, French, and dozens of other sources, all mixed together and constantly evolving through use. Scientific knowledge represents perhaps the most systematic form of cultural information recycling. Each new discovery builds on previous knowledge, recycling and refining ideas that came before. The concept of information recycling we're exploring right now draws on ideas from physics, biology, computer science, and philosophy, combining and transforming concepts from multiple disciplines. The internet has created unprecedented opportunities for information recycling, allowing ideas to spread, mutate, and evolve at speeds that would have been unimaginable just a few decades ago. Memes, cultural units of information that spread through imitation, can now circle the globe in hours, undergoing constant modification and selection as they spread through social networks. But information recycling in human culture goes far beyond just the digital realm. Every conversation you have involves recycling linguistic and conceptual information, taking ideas you've heard before and combining them in new ways, passing them on to others who will further modify and transmit them. Every book, every song, every work of art recycles cultural information, taking existing elements and arranging them in new patterns. The concept of the Library of Babel, imagined by writer Jorge Luis Borges, envisions a vast library containing every possible book, every possible combination of letters and spaces up to a certain length. In this imaginary library, most books would be nonsense, but somewhere in the collection would be every great work of literature ever written, or that could ever be written, along with perfect biographies of every person who ever lived, and accurate predictions of every future event. Quantum mechanics suggests that something like Borges' Library of Babel might actually exist in the quantum possibility space of the universe. The many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics proposes that all possible alternative histories and futures are real, existing in parallel quantum realities. If this interpretation is correct, then all possible information, every possible arrangement of matter, every possible thought, every possible experience exists somewhere in the vast space of quantum possibilities. This brings us to one of the most intriguing ideas in modern physics, John Wheeler's it from bit hypothesis, which suggests that reality itself might emerge from information. According to this view, what we think of as solid matter and energy might be secondary phenomena arising from more fundamental information processing operations at the quantum level. If Wheeler's idea is correct, then the universe might be a vast information processing system, constantly recycling information through quantum interactions, with what we experience as physical reality being a kind of emergent pattern in this cosmic computation. The particles and forces we observe might be like pixels on a cosmic computer screen, temporary arrangements of information that create the appearance of a material world. This information, theoretic view of reality suggests that memory and forgetting, learning and unlearning might be fundamental processes that operate at all levels of the universe, from quantum systems to biological organisms, to human cultures, to cosmic evolution itself. Every interaction between particles processes information. Every biological adaptation stores information about environmental conditions. Every human thought contributes to the vast library of cultural knowledge. Consider your own memory right now as you read these words and think about information recycling. Your brain is constantly processing information, storing some of it, discarding some of it, connecting new information to existing knowledge in complex networks of association. The memories you form while reading this will be integrated into your existing knowledge base, recycled and recombined with other information every time you remember or think about these concepts. But your memories are not passive storage systems like computer files. Every time you remember something, you reconstruct that memory from scattered neural traces, potentially modifying it in the process. Memory is an active, creative process that constantly recycles information, updating it with new associations and contextual information. Sleep plays a crucial role in this memory recycling process. During sleep, your brain actively consolidates memories, strengthening important connections while allowing unimportant information to fade. The dreams you experience might be part of this recycling process, as your brain randomly activates different memory traces and explores new combinations and associations. The information in your brain right now, your memories, your knowledge, your patterns of thought, represents a unique arrangement of recycled cultural and experiential information. The concepts you understand, the languages you speak, the skills you've learned, all of this information has been recycled through countless other minds before reaching you, and it will continue to be recycled through other minds after you. Even this very moment of consciousness, as you read these words and think about information recycling, is part of the vast information processing system that is the universe. The quantum interactions in your neurons, the electrical patterns that create your thoughts, the complex information processing that creates your sense of self, all of this is part of the cosmic information recycling process. In the deepest view of information recycling, everything that has ever happened, every thought that has ever been thought, every experience that has ever been experienced, becomes part of the permanent information content of the universe. Nothing is ever truly forgotten. It might become inaccessible, scrambled beyond practical decoding, but the information remains encoded somewhere in the quantum state of the cosmos. This suggests a kind of cosmic memory, a universal information storage system that preserves the record of everything that has ever occurred. When stars explode and scatter their contents across space, they're not just recycling matter and energy, they're also recycling information about the nuclear processes that created heavy elements, about the gravitational dynamics that led to stellar collapse, about the billions of years of stellar evolution that preceded the explosion. When biological species evolve and adapt to new environments, they're not just changing their physical characteristics, they're also recycling information about environmental conditions, about successful survival strategies, about the deep patterns that govern life's relationship with its surroundings. When human cultures develop new technologies, create new art forms, discover new scientific principles, they're not just creating novel cultural products, they're also recycling and transforming vast libraries of accumulated human knowledge, combining existing information in new ways to create emergent possibilities. As you prepare for sleep tonight, consider that your mind is part of this vast cosmic information processing system. The thoughts you think, the dreams you dream, the memories you form and recall, all of this is part of the universe's ongoing exploration of its own information content, its endless recycling of knowledge, experience, and possibility. In the morning, when you wake up, your brain will have spent the night recycling information, consolidating memories, exploring new associations, preparing for another day of conscious information processing. You'll carry with you not just your own accumulated knowledge and experience, but also the recycled wisdom of countless generations, the accumulated information content of billions of years of cosmic evolution. And perhaps, in some deep quantum sense, the universe itself will wake up slightly different because of the information processing that occurred in your dreams, because of the small but real contribution your consciousness makes to the vast, ongoing conversation between mind and cosmos, between information and reality, in the endless dance of quantum possibility, that is existence itself. The information that flows through your mind tonight will continue its journey long after you're gone, recycled through other minds, other forms of consciousness, other information processing systems we cannot yet imagine. In the end, we are all temporary arrangements of cosmic information, brief patterns in the universe's endless exploration of what it means to know, to remember, to dream, to understand itself through minds like ours, in the eternal recycling of information that connects every thought to every other thought across space and time. And so we return to the question we began with: is anything in the universe ever truly lost? After wandering through forests and stars, rivers and cells, we've seen that what we call loss is more often transformation. The carbon in your body, the iron in your blood, the oxygen you breathe, all are part of cycles that began long before you and will continue long after. Nothing vanishes, it simply changes form. You are a temporary yet extraordinary arrangement of eternal elements. Your atoms were forged in ancient stars, passed through oceans, plants, and other beings before becoming you. When your pattern dissolves, those same elements will continue their journey, forming new lives, new stories, new wonders. This is the universe's quiet promise, that even in moments of change, nothing precious is ever wasted. Everything is recycled, renewed, and repurposed on scales that span galaxies and generations. Understanding this doesn't diminish our meaning, it deepens it. You are not separate from the cosmos, but woven into its very fabric. Every breath connects you to all life. Every heartbeat echoes ancient rhythms. You are a living expression of the universe wondering about itself. So how do we live, knowing this? With wonder, with gratitude, with peace, knowing you are part of something vast, beautiful, and ongoing. As you sleep, your body recycles, your brain renews, your dreams integrate. And tomorrow, you'll wake powered by recycled sunlight, breathing borrowed air, and continuing the journey of becoming. Sweet dreams, fellow Stardust. You are never lost, only becoming.